Hello?
Hi.
Are you coming to the happy hour? I need to vent.
I'm still at the office.
Oh my god, are you trying to be CEO or something?
Yeah.
You'll get there, but I'll see you at happy hour. So excited today to welcome Chelsea Sillars Sailings to today's episode. Chelsea is an accomplished creative producer and art director with over 13 years of experience in the fashion industry, having served as senior producer for Annie Leibovitz and held standout roles at iconic brands like Rag Bone and Faherty. She began her career producing large-scale fashion shoots, including numerous Vogue covers, and has since evolved into a creative force behind some of the industry's most accomplished brands and professionals.
In this episode, we dive into the realities of working in-house for a brand versus the freedom and hustle of freelancing, and explore what it takes to stay grounded and prioritize wellness while navigating this fast-paced creative environment. Chelsea, I know you started your career in fashion production. Can you share a little bit about what that role entails and how your experience there has shaped who you are and what you do now?
Yeah, for sure. So I fell into creative production fully. I studied architecture and graduated when the economy was really in a very bad spot. And I was looking for something that was related to green design. I came from school in Colorado where it was all about leads and helping the environment. And here I came to New York and was trying to figure out how to cobble some semblance of that into my life. And I was hired as a intern at a small little fashion label and ended up helping with their Fashion Week show, taking on way more responsibilities than one would assume an intern should. Which is hard, of course, in this industry. I very quickly was connected because of that experience with my first boss, an amazing woman named Tina Preschitz, who really showed me the ropes of what a producer is, and specifically a creative producer. So a traditional producer is very nuts and bolts. You sit there, you figure out how to get all of the elements into alignment so that the shoot or whatever the project is running forward smoothly. All of the elements are actually there, working well, etc. A creative producer has to be a bit more nuanced. You need to understand the sensitivities of the creative process of managing and mitigating different creative ideas within the same ultimate output and figuring out how to find through lines, especially when they are extremely disparate from one another. So for example, my very first experience with that in a big way was a photographer who wanted one very different location, aka a beach, and a client who wanted a house. So finding something that worked for everyone without ruffling feathers on either side. Ultimately, we landed on a rundown hotel, which had the texture of a beach. It was a little patinaed, but also had the inside and the coziness of a house. So creative producing, you really have to figure out how to do that fancy footwork and also have your own creative vision throughout the whole thing. So knowing that we need to have daylight. Okay, we need to find a place that actually has this beautiful natural light that's not going to blow out the clothes. You need to think of all the different scenarios that a producer would, but also ensure that it still looks or reads beautifully. So that's always how I've defined creative production. It's nuts and bolts with a whole lot of visual representation included and aligning all those different visual representations.
Yeah. I think production is a term in the creative industry that gets really overused and people don't
Totally.
really understand what it entails because it is a lot. And I've always thought that production is one of the hardest fields you can really get into. You have to be good at numbers, you have to have a creative lens, you have to be good with people. I mean, you really have to do it all, which is the fun part about it as well.
Absolutely. I always say that every single person who comes into this business should be a producer for a year or at least a PM or sit in a producer's office because it's so much more than you think. It's so simple to boil it down to like, oh, you're making the call shoots, you're making the catering order, you're ensuring that we're on budget, but it's all of the emotional side of it is so much more. And as you were saying, the being able to manipulate and know how numbers work and make sure that we're not overspending, but also that we're delivering and coming in on time. You're juggling a lot of different balls that tend to not work well together. And you have to do it with a smile.
Yeah. You touched on like working on a project where two people had really different visions and you kind of had to find a way to make a project work? It's somewhere in the middle.
They're all like that.
And you've also worked in your career with a ton of well-known celebrities, public figures. I mean, what is that like? And especially in a creative setting, how do you balance that? And is that a skill in itself that you've had to develop over the years?
Yes, and one that I had to develop sort of unexpectedly very quickly. And I'll say that I feel very fortunate because I've always had the ability to look at the human in front of me, no matter what the human represents, be it the talent, the photographer, the most famous multi-Oscar winning person who I'm trying to take a coffee order for. I always put on or the PA or literally anyone. It's always that they are a human. From a creative point of view, yes, it's sort of you're looking at the different weights that the people hold from the final decision making, and ensuring that you're hearing everyone and figuring out how to take the VVIP's voice as the one that seems like it has the most weight, but ensuring that you're actually getting the output that everyone needs. So it's kind of this game of just figuring out how to respond properly. So being really excited and being really inspired by everyone, because truly everyone comes to an idea with the table with a creative idea. I'm always very impressed by. And trying to distill it down into something that's actually manageable and possible. And from the celebrity side of things, it's just, again, remembering that everyone is truly a human. Everyone has their own insecurities. Usually the reasons that when they do show up with kind of bad behaviors or not great interactions, it's totally something to do with them, and just trying not to take anything personally.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure. I think it's funny. Not that like, your company CEO is the equivalent as a celebrity, but in a sense, it kind
Kind
of
of.
is
Yeah.
because, everyone's looking up to this one person who leads this whole
The
pack.
creative North Star,
Yeah,
it's,
exactly.
yeah.
But my dad always says, don't be afraid of these people. They get dressed in the morning the same way that you do. They're just human. They have the same things as you. So I love that like everyone is just a human.
Exactly. And I think that it's actually something to remember both up and down. I do my absolute best to ensure that I'm talking to people who are at all levels in the same way. Just, even looking at it from the flip side, it's the guy whose main job on set is to get everyone coffee. Like, they are still a human. They got dressed in the morning,
Totally.
are there with their own personal baggage and issues, and you want to just make sure that everyone's just feeling seen, heard, and held.
It's so important because you never, even that one assistant, they could be a huge celebrity or your boss one day. And like, that's why it is so important that no matter who you work with in any industry, kindness is always key. And it just
Yeah.
makes like set better when everyone gets along. But it can be really intimidating in front of the celebrities or the CEOs. I agree with you where it is something you have to learn, and you can only learn by being thrown into it. Because just like any job, client services is kind of a tough skill, and so when you have that extra notch of this person being someone everyone knows, or this is going to be really out in the public, it can be scary, and it's something you have to learn.
Totally. There have been people and situations and moments where I've had to really be like, okay, you got this. Usually people who, it's like authors, those are the people I
Oh.
get nervous around, because I am a huge bookworm and I love language, and I'm always sure I'm just going to say something bananas around them.
That's so great. And so after like you did production for a little bit, then what was your next move career-wise?
It's been a kind of curly Q career path. I was fully producing, and then I don't know a single producer who doesn't have the ability to say they've been 17 other things. We're pigeonholed into a singular word oftentimes, but we're doing so many different things. When I went in-house at Rag, I was brought in to be the producer, and just because of situations, there wasn't a creative lead for a little while, and I ended up doing a lot of like on-set art directing and just a lot of creative development, and I loved it, and it was something that I had always sort of seen as others do that. It was something I always really wanted to do and knew I had in me, but was just sort of unaware to how I could actually make that evolution. And so while I was there, I really just sort of gained the confidence of, oh no, I am creatively very aware and capable and excellent at directing people and how to like stand and move their bodies, and how, especially when it came to like e-commerce, who knew, and how to communicate between photographer and the CEO. I figured out how to do all of the true creative direction stuff through just accidentally having to do it. Again, I've had a career that's been very, here I am, there's pieces that need to be picked up, no one's picking them up, okay, I'll pick them up. And just, I kind of love that. In an interesting way, I've done that same cycle like two more times, where I've gone into places really mostly as the producer side of things, and then ended up again picking up pieces of creative void and just filling them. And it kind of works. I feel having the accessibility of, like, for lack of a better phrasing, right brain, left brain, all in the same moment, of being able to move forward with execution, but also get into the more conceptual, emotional state of self. I'm able to really tap into all of the pieces of this business that I think are exciting. I couldn't ever just sit there and do creative and then sit back and let someone else produce it, because for me, maybe I should one day learn how to do that. But right now it's just so, it's so easy to do both in tandem for me. Further than that, I have fully stepped away from being in-house at brands. I've decided that's not something for me anymore, which is great. I've learned so much. I've met so many people through those experiences, but I have decided that go forward for my career, it's more about finding project-based things that will be in alignment with who I am at the given moment, because, we're always changing, we're always evolving. And I think it's harder to do that within a larger scale corporation.
What an exciting thing, though, to figure out that, some of the things you've done in your career, they were at once periods where you go, oh, that's the other person's job. Like, I'm always touching this one side. And then to be able to do it and be like, wait, I actually can do this. I mean, it's a really rewarding feeling. And I think that just is like anything in any industry. Once you just try something out, you never know. And I think fear is what can really hold people back. You might be like, no, like, that's the art director's job. That's the creative director's job. Like, I can't do that. I'm only on this one side. But then you start to take those things on. You're like, actually, I love this more. It kind of leads me into another question I have for you of, have you ever had to walk away from like a skill or some sort of task at work, something you were really good at, but no longer as passionate about?
Absolutely. And that's actually a personal boundary that I struggle with often. These pieces of, as I was just saying, I can do the creative and then also do the production. And then it's me working from 8 a.m. till 3 a.m., ensuring that all of the receipts and numbers are put in, but also making sure that I have done all of the creative decks and treatments, or done storyboarding or paper edits. And those are the moments where I really have to look at the pile in front of me and say, I don't need to be doing all of this. Yes, I am very efficient with it. Yes, I have the total capability to do it, but just because I'm capable doesn't mean I have to. And I also really love teaching people how to learn how to do this stuff. I oftentimes will bring on someone who is excited about learning about production or learning about art direction, and I'll have them take on pieces. And so it's not at this point like I've been able to walk away from any of these things that I don't necessarily love fully anymore, but I've gotten much better at realizing when it's time to bring in someone as support, and also as someone who I can teach, who can therefore help me on more projects go forward. Because I think as women in particular, we're really intent on doing it all and being like, we can do this alone. We can shoulder it all. No. I don't need to be a disturbance. I don't need to ask for help. No, I don't need to spend money. I think that as women, we really have this tendency to shoulder everything, to say, oh no, I don't need help. No, I don't need to spend the budget there to bring on a PA or a PC earlier. No, I can do it all. Don't worry. I'm not trying to be a nuisance. And then we end up in these situations where we're watching people around us excel forward because we're just in the weeds, literally trying to bail the ship out, and everyone else is off having creative evolution or career jumps, and you're still sitting there holding all of these pieces together and wondering why you're the only one holding the bag. And that is a lesson that I am constantly trying to remind myself. I don't need to do this all alone. I don't need to prove that as a woman I'm completely capable and independent. It's a lesson that I'm trying to really shake out of my nervous system, and it takes a lot of work, but it's real.
No, yeah, it is so real. I think what oftentimes people forget is that people like to help and never
Mhm.
be afraid to reach out to someone who, you look up to and be like, what do I do in this situation? Or there's a lot of people that are hungry to assist with things, but it's something that I totally agree with you about, especially being a female. Like there's so many times where I'll be working, I'm like, I can do this all, but then it's like, no, I really can't. I can't do everything. And
We also don't need to.
yeah, we don't need to, and it's like if I would've tapped this person, they think differently, and actually this would've ended up better, you
Mhm.
know? So, that's a really good lesson, and I mean, it's something you have to learn, and it's hard to learn,
Yeah.
but it's really important.
Yeah, and I think about all of my most memorable mentors, and they are all women, and they are all women
Yeah,
who were generous with their time and who were willing to sit down and teach me, and then let me shadow them, and then let me help them, and then eventually let me work alongside them. And I think back at those really hugely influential moments of my life, those experiences where I learned something that I never thought I would be able to, and I hope that I can do the same kind of thing for others because it's mutually beneficial, truly. It's like you create another person who has this skill set that has been living in your brain, and all of a sudden you can support each other and grow together, and it's great.
totally.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I always find it funny when you're like nervous to ask for help, but
Mhm.
people are so like, yeah, of course, let me drop everything I'm doing to help you in this one instance.
Totally.
And without teamwork, then nothing will get done. So,
No, and it's so much more fun when it's a team.
yeah, exactly. It's so rewarding. But I guess kind of going off of that, you know, you started your career during a time whenever ad campaigns were a huge production. There was no AI. Can you kind of talk us through how things have changed over time and, if you feel like creativity is hurting in a way in this digital forward age?
Yeah. I have a lot of opinions about that, and I don't necessarily know if they're all in alignment with how people feel. Started at a time where, I mean, I had just gotten like a very rudimentary smartphone. It like had the internet info. You'd do the preliminary production, and then you'd get things buttoned up and sent out, and that was kind of it. And what I've watched happen over the years is that indecision is the norm. No one has to make a decision until the 11th hour. And sure, there's something really beautiful in that if you can sort of at a whim make adjustments, make changes, make tweaks. There is beauty in that.
Yeah,
It also causes a lot of upheaval, unnecessary stress, surprises at the ultimate output. You can have someone who signed off on something who is completely in the dark, and at the end, you ultimately have to explain, well, this person said that this was all approved. The indecision and the ability to keep changing your mind doesn't allow us to actually feel committed and stoked on our creativity. There's always something else you could be doing, always something else you could be tweaking, instead of looking at the decision that has been made and building on that instead of continuously changing it. I think that's where I've watched a lot of campaigns that you see that are out there now that look exactly like each other's campaigns. It's because they're all watching the same trend forecasting and the same sudden shift of even vocabulary, and are jumping on it
Mhm.
at the same exact moment, and therefore everyone has the exact same output, and it's watered it down a lot. I do really miss the days of, we're going to do it like this. Okay, that's what we're doing. And then from a AI perspective, yes, it's going to make a lot of parts of my job easier. However, I don't need them to be easier. It's the output that has just grown and grown and grown and grown that's demanding that we have ease in these things that are actually really important for the creative process, like storyboarding. You need to be able to sit there and, or at least in my opinion, I need to be able to sit there and think, okay, I want a guy sitting at a coffee table and I want to sift through different references and look through my archive to really feel and refine into the creative scope that I have. Sure, this opinion could change in half a year when all of a sudden I'm able to triple my work, but I like the process of, I like the slow side of it. I like the curiosity and the tangents that you can take from a creative point of view and how it can evolve a bit more organically than just churning and churning and churning. And you're like, oh, this is cool. What else could it do? Oh, this is also cool. I'm like a little bit older. I like the like slow side of things. And I feel sad that we're ramping up and ramping up and ramping up in a space that was already so much faster than it was.
I think not enough people really touch on the output element. I think most people, when they touch on the world right now and AI and how things are changing, people are like, well, it's more efficient. The process is more efficient. Things are easier. And it's like, yeah, that's great. But then the output is just most likely going to be shit or it's going to look crappy. I mean, that's something that needs to be touched on more, especially in an industry like fashion or, any sort of advertising. Like the output is what's important. It's not the process.
We're running away from, again, the human element. It's, yes, there was a lot of issue with the campaigns that came out in the early aughts, but we were still creating and developing a narrative of this person who you were seeing walking across the screen or in the magazine wearing this amazing outfit. You could kind of like get this imagination of like, oh, what would it be like? Where with AI, it's so easy to create that I think that imagination is just getting stifled. And I don't know. I worry that we're just taking away the story behind it and the human story instead of the selling and the KPIs and the ROIs and the how quickly can you sit at a desk and turn around a campaign. Like it's
In a world of the freelancing, would you say that's where it is a little helpful? Because it's like, at one point you really were only freelancing for this one thing you're good at, but now it's like maybe you're not as good at the copywriting side or you're not as good at like the production side or whatever. But now with AI, you can tap those things a little bit easier and like as your own self and being, as a candidate for a job, it makes you a little stronger. Like, would you say that it's helpful in that sense? Or do you think,
sure, from like a on paper you can do this
yeah,
standpoint, but like I still stand by the, we can all tell what's a AI written piece and it's all becoming quite homogenous and everyone's like, oh, well, the AI just needs to learn you. I'm like, I don't need AI to learn me. I
yeah.
am me.
The creator will always win and be what like,
Yeah.
everyone's like, "AI is gonna take over," but, I mean, it's always who's controlling it, like, that still needs to be the strong so you need to be creative in what you're telling it to do,
Yeah.
and if you don't have that, it's not gonna be a good output.
Exactly. I also think that as a freelancer, I don't want to be selling myself as a one woman show. I want
Yeah,
to be collaborating. I
yeah,
want to work with copywriters and I want to work
exactly.
with editors and composers and movement directors
That's the
because
fun part of it.
that's the beautiful part of our existence here is the human
Yeah.
connection and how we can find different pieces of ourselves in others and how we can bring out other pieces of people into themselves and just like you're we're going to lose that if we silo through using AI tools. And I know that look, I get that there's a whole lot of money savings and I get that from an environmental perspective perhaps it's better, but is it? It uses
I don't think so.
I
Uses a
can't
lot of
actually say
energy.
that confidently because I think it's pretty shitty for the world. So yeah, someone's saving a lot of money and putting it in their own pockets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that, a lot of like leaders in the space are have these like indecisive moments or they're waiting till the last hour. What do you think it is that kind of shifted the mindset between we're sticking with the plan, this is what we decided months ago, to now where people are like, wait, actually I want to change it. I want to change it. I want to change it.
I think it's how quickly we're getting and receiving content all the time.
Yeah.
That's not going anywhere. We're going to have this over-indexed barrage of imagery in particular. However, it doesn't need to be fed as fast as it is. And I think that we are continually, even me, I'm like, oh, I really like these pants. And then I see other pants. I'm like, oh, I like these pants. No, I like these
Yeah.
pants. I still really, really like the first pants. Just buy them. instead of thinking
Right.
about the other five. I
Yeah.
think that we're oversold right now to the point that we don't even know our own opinions,
Yeah.
which maybe
Yeah.
that's like a bigger bigger issue outside of just this industry.
I mean, it's crazy. From the brand side, we run out of content so quickly because of this like need for endless amounts of content. And, we struggle a lot with you have a campaign and then how long can you make this campaign last? We just got this great new batch of imagery. Like, this is only going to last us for 2 weeks.
I know.
You invest so much into these shoots that, if you're just like spitting it out left and right without like authenticity behind it, then like what's the point?
Correct. That was part of the reason that I struggled in brands after being in editorial for as long as I was, because editorial, it's going
Of
to print.
course.
You have your story. It's going to live as one container and it's going to be beautiful or it's not going to be, but it's in the magazine, it's online, maybe they'll post it on social. That's it. Whereas at brands, exactly what you're saying, we went from needing, 15 assets in a day to 23 to 35, and we would need 2 models. And no, wait, we need 6 models, and it was half the price, and I was half the budget allocated. And the moreness, I understand that it's feeding a beast that is growing kind of at its own accord. But at a certain point, as marketing strategists and managers, of which like I've definitely sat on the marketing side of things too, and do understand the struggle. Can't we be more cohesive in what we're saying and less reactive? Can't
Totally.
we create the content that we really believe in, really value, know that we did well, and put it out with a cadence that's actually sustainable instead of churning and burning through content without actually thinking of the repercussions and ramifications of it down the line.
Yeah.
And look, I understand that you have to pivot to sell through a certain SKU, but there's innovative ways you can do that. You can do something that's a little bit more UGC focused, that's not less than, I mean, that stuff is super successful in its own regard, but where it's a bit more manipulative of the situation at large, instead of just saying, okay, we need to do a whole new thing.
Yeah. I kind of feel like there's always been a divide between campaigns and how brands react for like in fashion versus like traditional brands, like, food brands or just car brands or whatever. I think, especially in this world of social media, I still think that fashion and I would say beauty a little bit too has kind of stayed a little bit more true to like telling a story and not caring so much about what does culture want us to do. It's always kind of been like, let's look through the lens of the artists, the creators, the creative directors. It's always been a little bit more about storytelling, whereas like other more traditional brands kind of will copy what fashion does, or they'll try to be more reactive. And that is one thing I always like from going, working in fashion to now being like at an ad agency and having that experience. I do think that I would give a little bit more credit to like the fashion industry for being more present with the moment and just caring more about building up that story rather than just wanting to react to what's happening in culture.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. There is at least this interest in, I mean, selling a version of self, which when
Yeah.
you say it like that sounds a little, but it's kind of a fun, even as little young children, we would play pretend, and fashion is a interesting extension of that and the fusion of creating self as art piece. It's sort of how I've always framed it in my mind. It's like it's the fusion of imagination and art. And I do
Love
think
that.
that from a marketing point of view, it still exists, or at least it's trying to still exist as such. I
Yeah.
would say the brands that are doing it successfully are getting fewer and further between, and that's probably specifically in alignment with the demand of the content.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I mean, depends what level of like brand you are,
Yeah.
like more luxury brand doesn't need to produce thousands of pieces of
Yeah.
content because they already built their brand identity, like people in the contemporary space are just trying to keep up with each other and it's always a competition and everyone kind of makes the same product. So do you want to come to our brand instead of buying the same thing at this other brand?
Totally.
It's a hard battle.
I will say that I've been very impressed with certain brands, sort of upper mid tier, that have slowed down a notch. And I'm thinking of a
Yeah.
couple very specifically, but where it's going back to that selling a lifestyle, selling a story. It feels kind of reminiscent of the early aughts where it you would look at the photo and it feels, even when you're just getting an email blast or seeing it on your phone, it feels reminiscent of opening it in a magazine and seeing that, ooh,
Yeah.
Capri.
Yeah, that's great. What brand comes top of mind?
Honestly, J. Crew.
They're doing a really
Mm.
great job. I just
Love
saw
them.
today they're doing like a whole beach club
Yep.
in
In
Italy.
Puglia.
Yeah, it's I
Yeah.
love that they're selling the lifestyle. They're
And
not
they're
just
doing it
selling the
really
clothes.
well. And
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's that's the stuff that I get excited to still see, because it feels like someone at the helm there and in brands who are doing things similarly is having these same kind of conversations of like, whoa, 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 we're going too fast.
Yeah.
Why?
totally.
Wouldn't it be more efficient to slow down and generate less but excellent? Like, yes, is the answer.
So, Chelsea, going back to you and your career, just because you've done so much, you've lived so many lives, and have you experienced burnout at all? And if you have, how have you kind of overcome that?
Yes. Burnout is something that I am all too familiar with and have a couple of different tricks and methods that have kept it at bay. And then also a couple of different ripcord kind of experiences with just evacuating myself from the country and spending a couple of months abroad. My main loves are yoga and ceramics. There was an article that came out in 2015 in Vogue that was ceramics is the new yoga. And I was like, haha, I do both. And then I sort of reflected on maybe why. And it was because I was so close to burning out that I was seeking things that would really ground me. And the yoga, I was a dancer when I was young, and I've always had like a deep movement practice. And so finding yoga was sort of the next iteration of being a ballerina, of like, okay, feeling into body, breathing, really like finding a flow state and knowing that it was an hour where no one could reach me. And then ceramics sort of was doubling down into that, where, I'd tell my team I was going to go throw on the wheel, and okay, no, I literally can't answer my phone. They're in mud. And it's all about connection, or at least on the wheel, it's all about connection between breath, hands, clay, this earth form. Doesn't even matter what you ultimately create. It's just a time to sit with yourself and be in your own world. And so those two things have kept me going through a lot of the hardest times of my career, where things were just challenging, internal politics at brands that can just be so disruptive, or way too much work, just carving out those little bits of time where I could actually just deeply connect either to my own personal art form or my own personal movement practice. And then in 2023, I was really just we had a really intense couple of months, and my now husband was planning to go to Italy and Turkey for 2 months he's a photographer, and he was working on a continuation of a series that he had been shooting. And I was just sort of moved to go with him. I had never taken time off like that in my adult life. And it was the most illuminating thing I could have done for myself, because the first couple of weeks I really struggled with being okay with not having emails to respond to or not having things on my checklist. And then after a couple of weeks, all of a sudden the noise settled, and I got to meet myself for the first time in my 30s, quite truly, of just me for me. What do I want to do today? Where do I want to be today? Who do I want to show up as? And I was, quite frankly, very pleased with all of those answers, and brought back that connection that I don't know if I would have been able to find without taking that kind of space. And look, I know that it's real privilege to be able to do something like that. But after working as many years as I had, I figured out I just needed to give myself that kind of break. And so when I came back, I sort of stumbled into another full-time role. And then about half a year later was like, no, I need to be able to do this balance of work really hard, focus, just be really, really in it. Because when I do something, I don't do it one foot in, one foot out. It's 100%. and then take a beat, go be myself, go focus on art or movement or family or reading books in bed. So taking this new patterning of life that is newly learned by me and really letting it become my normal has been really just inspiring for myself. And it's hard to stomach sometimes to be like, or to admit to, yes, I'm going to work for a bunch of really intense months and then I'm going to take a month and go play with clay in Italy. But it is really, really rejuvenating. And I will say you don't have to avoid burnout by going to Italy for a couple months, but if you can do it. But it's at least finding those things throughout your journey that really just make you feel like you are doing something that is exclusively yours. That is, this hour, this 45 minutes, this 15 minutes today is mine and no one else's. This is not, I am not making this pot for anyone besides for the joy of making the pot. I'm not doing yoga so that I look better for someone else. I'm doing this because my body loves moving. Like those kind of like me for me moments help to keep the burnout at bay.
Love that. Love yoga. And I love, like, exercise is such a great form of this personal time that you have just to yourself. And even if, you're doing it on your own, but doing a workout class in general is like, I've found lately that, because I can't be on my phone during that time. I
Yeah.
can't take a break to look at my phone. I can't look at who's texted, have I gotten an email, whatever. And you're in like a dark room most of the time, and
Mhm.
it's a magical feeling that is hard to get other places.
Yeah, totally. And it's funny because as the years go, I go through, right now I'm really obsessed with the class, which is just, all endorphins. It's kind of more back to like my dance days than the yoga days, but it's like jumping around and yelling. And I go in and I'm always like, I don't want to go. I don't know why I signed up for this. And then halfway through, I'm like crying. And by the end, I'm like, yay. So it's, also checking in that you're not like gripping on to whatever used to be helpful. Well, yes, yoga is still something I do 2 or 3 times a week. I also kind of need right now that more like, I don't know, somatic experience of flailing my limbs and yelling.
If you get in a pattern of not doing these things, you forget how important that they are.
Yeah.
And then you finally get yourself to go back and back in your routine, and you're like, "Oh my god, why have I not done this the past week?"
It's crazy that we have to like now do things to stay away from our phones. It's just with work, it makes work more stressful because we know that people can always reach us and like pop out a question at 10 p.m. or something. And it's just a stressful feeling.
It's really the boundaries that have been absolutely blown up by having our phones is really abysmal. And I really think that COVID amplified it. But as someone who manages people often, I now most of the time, not all the time, but I will like schedule send emails for the next day. And unless it's like
Mhm.
a true shit, this thing didn't get done that we needed for everyone else's sake, but also for my own, I don't do it. But it's
Yeah.
again, it's hard. You have to sort of accept that people are going to be annoyed by it, but also like, hey man, you should probably be taking a break too. Like go hang out with your
Yeah.
kids or yourself.
Yeah. No, that's so true. I love that. Okay, well, we'll kind of wrap it out with this last question. If there's one message that you hope listeners can walk away with, what would it be?
First and foremost is that kindness is such a practice and a practice that we forget is a practice, but it's the kindness that you give to everyone who's around you, even when things are really challenging. And also the kindness that you give to yourself of just like, hey man, you just can't do it today. Just take a beat, or like, hey self, really good job with that, even though it's like something that you're supposed to do, just like acknowledging and giving yourself those little words of encouragement and also giving them to the people around you. I think so often we're just on this like go 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 that we forget to say genuine thank yous and acknowledge people's good work and people's efforts. So really just, I don't know, every day just taking a moment to just reflect on what kindness is existing within self. And then also always remembering to find that moment that's truly just yours in a day. I know that I was just saying that, but I can't emphasize it enough. Just the really, really positive concept of selfishness. Just saying, this 15 minutes is mine to journal. This 20 minutes is mine to read. This moment is mine to just stare lovingly at my dog. Giving yourself that every single day, even if it means taking yourself away from like the productivity, will ultimately make you just so much more self-fulfilled and successful in yourself. Like, who cares about the fiduciary or the ladder climbing side of success? Successful within your own being.
That's awesome. I love both of those things. And it's so crazy that people don't like thank people much
I know.
anymore.
Ever.
It's my spin instructor is always telling us at the end of class, don't forget to say thank you to your instructors. Like, people don't do that. And it's crazy. I mean, these people just kicked your
Right?
butt for 30
They
minutes. Like, say
kicked your
thank you.
butt and got you through your friggin' day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
End your day tomorrow. Say thank you.
literally. But thank you goes such a long way, and
Yeah.
people just need to be kind, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
we can
I
do
love
it.
that, Chelsea. Thank you so much. This was seriously so great. And
Yeah.
I feel really inspired. And especially, I love it's not all about climbing the ladder. It's also just like climbing personal goals for yourself and getting yourself to places you want to be. I think that's really important. And reflection is as well.
Yeah. Yay.
Yeah.
Well, this was really fun, guys.
So fun.
Thank
I'm so
you.
happy.